This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 094.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Dr. Michael Bugg, Dr. Jonathan Light. Great news today, Jonathan. You're not a criminal. I was very suspicious of how this police check would come back, but all clear.
I was. So for everybody that doesn't know what Mike's talking about, I had to get a police report done really quick in order to be able to go volunteer at my kid's school. We have a trip to the zoo planned, and it was last minute. I've been watching the police site for the last week every single day to see where they're at. And just as Mike said, they're letting me go. Woohoo!
Nice. I was worried there.
You know what? You sit in the back of a police car once, you just never know what it's going to look like after that.
Well, I don't even know where to go here. You're throwing me curveballs. It begs the question. You've been in the back of a police car.
We're just going to leave it at that. In the younger years, things happen. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, we'll leave that stone unturned, I guess.
That's correct. We just, there's things in life that just have to be,
Okay, so going to the zoo, is it gonna anything cool? Like, are you gonna get your hands on any animals, or is it just gonna be peeking from the trails?
Dude, I don't have a clue. Like, there's gonna be 19 kids all talking French, of which I'm gonna hopefully be able to keep up with. I don't know half the animals' names in French, and I'll figure it out. So I have no clue. I'm just gonna show up and help.
I love it. None of this surprises me, by the way. That it's like, I have no idea. I'm just showing up. Do you speak French? Like, where are you at on that?
Oui, je parle français beaucoup maintenant. Yeah, okay. Enough to get by for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, these kids go hard. Like my son's in grade 1 and they've got it going. It's a Francophone school. So that's all they do. So as an example, he was at a birthday party last week. Candace went to pick him up and they're just back and forth. Just, and it's impressive. So by next year, I'm probably screwed. Yeah.
I've only got one language, and that is, I'm always so impressed by people that speak multiple languages. And there's some people that speak like 3, 4, 5, 6 languages, and you're like, wow, that is an incredible skill.
I agree. Yeah. And if you look at the olden days, that was more common, to have 4, 5, 6 languages, especially if you were in Europe, etc. So yeah, I think for both my kids, the goal is to get them trilingual as quick as possible. And in the school they're currently at, then they'll start learning Spanish in grade 4, which again, in the current setup for North America, I think that's only going to become more and more important.
I like that. Trilingual. Good for you.
That's the plan. So that's what's on my adage. What's happening on your docket?
Oh, just same old real estate stuff. We're selling a bunch of properties this year. So that's where I'm headed as soon as we wrap this recording, getting another property listed. I mean, it was time. We always said we were selling them around the 10-year mark, and it's been 10 years. Really, really excited about the simplicity that this will create, right? So we're selling off some of our older properties, our single family homes, really focusing on our multifamily portfolio.
Yep.
But it's hard to put into words the amount of sort of energy things can consume in the background. So we're really trying to trim that down.
Well, we spoke about it today, on this podcast with Kate, and being an entrepreneur and doing what you're doing, with all these single family homes, it all adds up. I've owned those types of properties before, and there's always something. And it doesn't feel like much, but heck, you've got a lot of them. It adds up over time. So good for you for simplifying.
That's our goal. I mean, we're not exactly where we want to be on that front yet, but yeah, simplify it. And then I like I'm a big fan of going, deeper in your niche and your swim lane. So, and then,
which is also super cool because your swim lane has changed over time. As you've evolved and gained experience, I've watched your swim lane change.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, now it's funny, like looking back on it, I would now argue everyone's probably will. Like, it is kind of naive to think that what you picked, 10 years ago is going to be exactly what you want right now. And I think that's the way things go. And this conversation again with Kate. So for our listener, we have a returning guest, Dr. Kate Baker. You may remember her from, I think it was episode 58 in October 2021. I mean, she is so inspiring to talk to. Like, I love talking to her and how her and her husband have created this life. I mean,
she readily admits it. Like she's made it her own, and yet she still struggles with pieces. She's still working hard, but you can see the joy in her being in her proper niche. You can see it emanate everything from her. And that's really cool to see, especially in veterinary medicine when there's so much negativity out there. Here is a lady, and there's so many of them. That's why we do this on this podcast. And here is one we have today that is showing us what's possible.
Yeah. She said something, and we didn't go into it because I was trying to watch the time, even though I did a poor job of that. But she said persistently curious. And I was like, wow, I've heard people talk about being passionately curious. The key is there, that curious word always comes up. But she said, I'm persistently curious. And I was like, isn't that interesting? And you can see how she navigates things, even with her app that is now launched and live. And we'll get into it in the conversation. But it started as a WhatsApp chat, and then just curiosity kept taking it to where it is now. It's a very cool skill.
Yeah, great conversation with her. Without a doubt, we will have her on a third time.
There you go, Kate. If you're listening, it's coming 6 or so months from now. Okay, well, let's dive in. Just as a reminder for our listener, Dr. Kate Baker grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and completed her DVM at the University of Tennessee in 2012. She then completed a rotating internship and clinical pathology residency and became board certified in 2016. Dr. Baker currently works as a veterinary educator and diagnostic clinical pathologist. She is the founder of the highly active Facebook group Veterinary Cytology Coffee House, offers continuing education resources through her website, Veterinary Cytology Schoolhouse, and recently launched a personalized telecytology consultation service, Pocket Pathologist. She lives on a small farm in Columbia, Tennessee with her husband and 2 young children. They have 3 dogs, a mini donkey, a pygmy goat, and 30 chickens, one of which, or it might have been the rooster, made a little guest appearance near the end. And this is just me ad-libbing here. Her Facebook group, I was on it the other day, over 65,000 members. So if you are in the veterinary world, as I assume you are listening to this podcast, I would check that out. Lots of activity in there. So another great conversation. Follow up to our last one. We jump into her and her family's RV trip across the United States, which I think is so cool. You're going to love this conversation with Dr. Kate Baker. All right, Kate, it is so good to have you back.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back. This is so fun. Like I said last time, this has been one of the most fun podcasts I've been on. So when you guys asked me back, I was like, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, Mike, we've got a chance.
I was remembering our recording last year in late 2021. And before we even hit record, we chatted for how long, and we're laughing. And it was very natural conversation. So this one should be even more fun because a really light topic. In our last recording, so for our listener, episode 58 back October 6, 2021, you had sort of teased us and said you and the family were loading up the kids in an RV and going across the United States. And we said, we are bringing you back, and you're telling us all about that.
Yeah.
So here we are on the hot seat. Fill us in on this epic family RV trip.
Well, it's still in progress. So, it's been a goal for us for this entire year to spread out a bunch of travel throughout the year. So we're kind of going for spurts and then coming home and going for spurts. And I hate to tell you guys, I did not do the RV wrap, like the outside. That's Kate. Yep. I know, but it's, who knows? It might, last time we talked about, I should put on the RV, Dr. Kate's cytology tour. It hasn't happened yet, but
there's lots of time in 2022 for that to happen still.
Exactly. But yeah, so just to kind of recap for everybody, and I don't even remember if I talked about this last time, but I was in a bad car accident back last year. And I know it sounds cliche, but I had this sort of moment, like you sometimes have when you have these types of events happen. And it wasn't the total precipitator of this, but it definitely pushed us forward because we had talked about doing this, getting an RV for some time.
Yep.
And it was kind of a goal of ours, but we hadn't really made any progress on it. But then after this accident, even though I was really busted up, I was like, okay, we're doing this, life is short, yada, yada. So we bought our RV and I renovated it to make it all Pinteresty and nice inside because I just, had to do that. And and so this year we scheduled out a year of travel in advance. And I tried to match up some of the travel with speaking events. So that's been really fun because it's been able, to be like work, and I know we'll talk more about that, about kind of the work aspect of the travel. But combining the two has been possible because I've been able to do some speaking events on some of our trips. So our first trip was in January, and okay, this was our first trip ever in this RV with these two young kids. I've got a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. I don't know. And I remember telling you guys, this is either going to be the best idea I've ever had or the worst idea I've ever had. So far, it's been the best. I'll tell you, I can update. It's been great. But it's hard, I'm not going to lie. It's not easy, but, sitting at home with my young kids that are bored, is also not easy. So, yeah, our very first trip ever with this huge, it's like it's a fifth wheel. It attaches to the back of your truck, was to the Florida Keys. So I live in Tennessee. So we're like, no, let's not do a weekend trip. Let's do 2 weeks in the Florida Keys. So, we thought, okay, well, it's pretty flat going down to Florida. So we'll see. And my husband grew up hauling cattle trailers. So I was like, all right, that feels like a nice, he's got the prerequisite checked off to be able to haul this thing safely. So we went to the Florida Keys, and our goal through the year is kind of to hit up as many national parks as we can. Him and I have never been outdoorsy, really. My husband does some, he likes to running and that kind of thing, but we've never really done a lot of hiking or a lot of stuff like that. So it was totally out of our comfort zone. But we went to 3 national parks in the Florida Keys, which were amazing. And then, and there were hard times, like the 2.5-hour ferry ride to Dry Tortugas, which is a national park off the coast of Key West. Beautiful. And it takes 2.5 hours to get there on a ferry. And it's really rocky, really rocky. And people are puking left and right. And, luckily me and my husband have pretty strong stomachs. So we're like, let's use this opportunity to have a beer and we're not driving this ferry. So we're going to have a beer with these kids and just have a good time. So we made the best of it. It was a lot of fun though. But that was our first trip, our very first inaugural, there it is, trip.
That's amazing.
Make up words on this podcast all the time. That's just
right.
adding to the list.
Hyper caffeinated here.
Anything goes, any word goes, any combination. I mean, Kate, I'm not surprised after chatting last time, how you've handled this. And when you said out of your comfort zone on the hiking, even just your first trip, not a weekend trip, we're going way down to the Florida Keys. I'm curious, going back to your car accident, you said that was kind of, the moment where you're like, okay, life's too short, we're doing this. Anything else in there? Because I've seen it. I mean, I'm guilty of it in various things in my life. And you hear other stories of it where people are like, someday we'll do that. And then someday never comes. Yep. And that's one of sort of life's tragedies, is all of a sudden the time slips away. Anything else in there that just rallied you and your husband and said, we're doing this? Because honestly, I've heard people say going on vacation with kids is just watching your kids in another location. Yes. It can be very stressful. And I only have 1 2.5-year-old. So a 1.5 and a 4.5 locked in an RV, you're conquering some things. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. There's a lot I can say around that. I'll start by saying I've kind of always lived, and I'm going to get deep here. Okay. I've kind of always lived my life in a way that I'm very aware of my mortality. So I'm conscious of that. I have the hypochondriac part of me, but also just the the daily like recognition. Like I told my husband, is it weird that kind of every day I think about that I'm going to die someday? And, you know, I don't like obsess on it, but it's something that's in, you know, it's in the back of my mind, like just as a present, you know, thought in my life. So I've always tried to recognize that and take opportunities that I notice are there, or make opportunities for myself just to live my life maximally. That doesn't mean I do a lot of like crazy things. You know, I mean, this feels crazy, but that's kind of what happened with this accident. It just almost heightened that level of like, all right, you know, I just want to just enjoy things. I just want to live the way I want to live. And I'm kind of nearing my 40s. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. So I'm having this, you know, somewhat of a, all right, you know, I'm in a healthy way. Like I just want to experience things that are here while I'm able to do them. And with this accident, it really put me in like, one, I thought I was going to die. Like during the accident, I passed out, and I had this moment where I was like, I think I'm dying. So this sucks. I didn't, thankfully, but my mobility was significantly reduced afterwards. I had a horrible ankle fracture that has taken over a year. It's still not normal, but I'm walking. That took a long time to heal. And I also fractured my wrist. And so I had this, you know, I was really confined, and I thought, I need to use my body. I need to go and do things and use my body as much as possible. So I thought, well, how can I make this possible? And I luckily have started to build this career prior to this accident that has allowed me flexibility in my schedule. So I know that a lot of people hit this kind of brick wall where they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that, but I have these things, you know, I have these responsibilities that I can't. And I don't want to be insensitive to that, because there are a lot of situations that truly people have, you know, like most people have a 9-to-5 job, or not in vet med longer than that, but you know, the regular full-time job that requires them to take vacation at certain times, or they have, you know, responsibilities that just are beyond their control. So it's not that you have to do all or nothing. Like you can get creative. There are ways to get creative, to create space to do things that you want to do. And for me, one of the biggest things that you mentioned was that mental block of like, well, it's just too hard. Like I do have the ability to do it. And I had the ability before my accident, as far as my schedule goes and stuff. But you know, this accident, I think, helped get me over that mental block of like, it's just too hard, like with these young kids. And I simply just don't want to wait till retirement. I just don't, to travel. And it doesn't mean you have to go full time. I mean, I'm not a full-time RVer, but we do travel a lot now. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because we'll be out at, we were just in where were we just? In Michigan, which we can talk about that trip. That was amazing. And, you know, it was like, you know, in the middle of the week, and like all the people around us are retirees, which is wonderful for them. And I talked to our RV mate, you know, next door to us, and kind of chatted with her, met her, and she was an older woman, and she was talking about how she had just retired, and she's just so happy and so grateful. And I don't know, for me, I thought I just don't want to wait to do these things until I retire.
That is inspiring. It really is, both from the standpoint, and you describe mortality, if I may step in for a moment.
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday speaks about this at length in terms of ego is the enemy and all his pieces related to Seneca and such. And he speaks, you need to think about that daily. And it sounds like you're doing exactly that, both out of the reality of an accident, but then also saying, hey, I want to take and enjoy my life to its fullest.
Yeah.
It also sounds like you have a partner, which along the way has allowed you to also set up, whether it's unconsciously or probably consciously, to be ready to take that next step. That's inspiring.
It is. And we talk about that a lot, Will and I, my husband, about, I mean, a lot. When we reflect, just when we do have time to talk to each other, you know, with our busy lives, like we say, you know, it's just so nice to have a partner that is willing to explore these things. I think we talked about this last time. He's a little bit more conservative as far as risk, just in life in general. So it's taken a little bit of encouragement from me to kind of go, it's, you know, it's okay to leap here and see if it works. And if it doesn't, the good thing is we still have our degrees. He's a veterinarian too, as you guys know. And, you know, we can always get full-time jobs. Like if these things are just not working out, And so and this kind of segues into, he just went to relief. He was a full-time ER veterinarian for many, many years, moved his way up in companies because he's an excellent vet and an excellent communicator and all these things. And it was hard for him to kind of go, okay, I'm going to step back from this and try something different. And it's what he's always known. And again, a little encouragement from me, not pushing, but just a little gentle kind of like, let's just try it. Because that's what kind of sucks, is that if you're, I have the flexibility in what I do, but if you have a partner that doesn't, that's an added challenge. So he went to relief and he absolutely loves it, which I knew. I'm not going to, pat myself on the back here. I knew this was going to happen, but he's been doing that for months now. And he's just so happy to be able to have that freedom.
Excellent.
And just to, and with Will with this sort of RV adventure over 2022, you have sat down and Will is working relief shifts when you're home, and then planning in sort of vacation while you guys go out on the RV.
Yeah, exactly. So I can kind of talk a little bit how we structure our work, because I know that's probably what people wonder is like, okay, how in the world do you make an income? Like, you're traveling a lot. What do you, because our neighbor, we were talking to our neighbor about our plans to travel, and he said, okay, so you're retiring? Like, I'm like, no, we're not retiring. We're still working really hard. We're just structuring things differently. So he's doing, relief, and he loads his shifts when we're home. So, we're still finding the balance of this, because we don't want it to just be balls to the walls, like work the whole time, when he's home. So we're trying to, this is kind of our next step, is looking at our finances, which we should have done before, really. We had some savings, so that allowed us to feel comfortable that we didn't necessarily have to have every single penny accounted for, like in as far as what our income coming up would be. But we also, kind of need to like get, figure that out, so we know that he doesn't need to just work the entire time we're home. Like, he can also take rest days. So that's what he's doing. And then for me, what I do is so different than kind of what a lot of people are used to as far as working in the veterinary world. But I, as you guys know, have a lot of online, I do online courses, I do online continuing education. Basically, that's one big branch of my online business, which I absolutely love. And so I get to teach veterinarians, but it's flexible because I can do it from my computer, and create all these, pieces of content that go into courses that then are passive income, right? Because all the work is up front, and it's a lot of work, but it's there in a course that then veterinarians and veterinary technicians can enjoy and purchase. And so that's a passive income source. So that allows me to not, trade my time for money in that sense. So that kind of works in the background. I'm always working on continuing education things, though. So it's not like I just made a course and I'm like, yay, okay, like I don't have to work anymore. So I work on continuing education things all the time, my social media stuff, all of those things. And so those are things I'm just working on all the time, and with the travel, there are times for me to do that. So like I said, we've been traveling really far distances. Yes. So while we're in the car, I'll sit there and work while my husband drives, because I'm not driving that thing. I'm not pulling that RV, not yet. So I'll work. The kids sometimes are distracting, but luckily I don't have to, it's not like I have to sit there and concentrate for long periods of time. And then when they go to bed, I have a fun picture of me and my husband sitting at a picnic table outside of our RV, having a beer, and we're working. Like, we're working at like 9:00 at night, but it's fun because I'm making like fun educational stuff. It's not like a drag,
You're in your zone, you're in your flow. You created that space, as a specialist, which is pretty impressive, to something different that's outside of a box, which is a veterinary hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
There is something, I don't even know how to describe it. The entrepreneur life, like if people think you work less than 40 hours, it's like, well, that is a joke. It's like, if you measured it, we probably work more, but that freedom that it's 9:00 at night, you're having a beer, and while you're working, it's very outside the box, and there's a lot of freedom to that.
100%. And I use the word work lightly, because there are things that I do that I don't like doing. So I do feel like it's work. I try to outsource those things now. You know, things like bookkeeping. I'm not, like I mentioned, I'm not really good at keeping track of money. I don't really want to do it. I mean, it's not that everybody could be good at it if you learn it, but I don't want to learn it. So I pay somebody to do that, you know? So when I am working, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And so I'm fine doing it at 9 o'clock at night, you know, and so there's a different perspective there. It's like, I don't want to work at 9 o'clock at night. Well, first of all, you don't have to. That's a good thing. If you're in a position like this as an entrepreneur, you can kind of structure that. But yeah, I'm working kind of all the time, although I do try to not do that. But yeah, I mean, just because I enjoy it so much, I kind of always want to get back to it. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of one branch of the work that I do. The other branch is that I just launched a telecytology consultation app. So that's and I can talk a little bit about what that is, but it's called Pocket Pathologist. I'm super excited about it. I've been working on it for like over a year. I didn't create the app. I hired somebody to help me make that. I don't have any technical skills, but that is more of a, you know, that's more active, you know, that's not like a passive thing, because I get submitted cases to me and then I look at them, read them, and send a report. So the veterinarian will take photos of their slide in practice and then send them via the app to the pathologist, which again, right now is just me, but I do plan to expand that with time. And so that's more like, I have to get that done by the end of the day, because I promised the same day turnaround. So that's been interesting to kind of work into the travel. I have a very understanding family. My husband knows, like, if I need to just like pop away for a minute to answer a case, or if there's something, you know, I try to batch it and not try to do it like while we're in the middle of, you know, at the beach. But, you know, we carve out space for that and try to make time for the things that are more time sensitive.
So can I jump into that for a second,
Yeah,
Mike?
I know. I'm just like talking.
No. The Pocket Pathologist, just from the standpoint of the business setup, because we were talking about it last time. It was a site that you had in development. Both from an entrepreneurial perspective, did you have your ducks in a row on what you wanted this to look like? And then if that was the case, how did you bring it to fruition, knowing that you had no technological, you know, your own words, you're not tech savvy, to make it come to fruition? And is it what you've expected so far? Because there's a lot of people out there that have ideas, but then never actually action them. So I'm interested to hear what you've done with this.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I'll preface it by saying, I think as I've been learning a lot about business and like what's possible and creating services that feel fulfilling to me, that also are really a service to the veterinary profession, you know, I know at this point, if I kind of pull myself out of this interview and think as a listener, I might be thinking, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what any of that is. That sounds great for her. Like, she must have some special skill or something like that. And I truly do not. The kind of key to all this has been just persistent curiosity. You know, like, I'm just curious, you know, I have this interest, this idea, and then I'm like, I wonder how I can make that happen. I don't put this big pressure, like, oh, this has to be this big thing. How can I make this happen? Kind of take another step, do a little Google search. And then it just sort of, and it's a lot of work. It's not that it just happens, but it just one step leads to another. And then you end up with something you're really excited about. So for Pocket Pathologists in particular, again, this kind of goes all the way back to my Facebook group, the Veterinary Cytology Coffee House. I recognized there are a lot of veterinarians that their clients can't afford, you know, and this is kind of the big one. There's other uses for this, but can't afford send-in cytology. So they are going to, you know, other resources like social media to ask for help, you know, it's kind of like, I don't really know what I'm looking at. And anybody's opinion is better than mine because I don't trust myself. And so I'm like, I feel like if we were able to provide, you know, an accessibility to a pathologist's opinion, even if it's not full slide review, even if it's not, you know, what you might consider the gold standard, like, what can we provide to help the veterinarian feel more confident about what their next steps are going to be with that mass or whatever it is. So I felt this like, okay, what can I do to help this? Because there's clearly a need here. So I actually started this on WhatsApp. I was like, I'm just gonna create this little service. I'm going to make a website. Like, don't know anything about making websites. So I actually had somebody help me, but you can easily make a website these days. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect or fancy. It just has to get the information across. And then I talked about it and said, you can submit your photos to me through WhatsApp, a free resource. There's WhatsApp for business, so it's like totally free. And they have some back end like business things that can help you like collect information and that kind of stuff, like name and blah, blah, blah. And then people were using it. And I was like, all right, well, I kind of unintentionally beta tested this idea, worked out some kinks about what kind of I would like to see if this ever became anything else. And then I got to talking actually with my assistant, who has a background in video production and kind of technology type things. And she said, have you thought about, like, maybe we should think about an app? And I was like, hey, cool, that sounds great. But I think apps are like $1 bajillion. So I'm not going to make an app. Like, I can't make an app. Well, we started talking more, kind of investigating, like, maybe we can do this or this. And anyway, she connected me with somebody she knew who had just left a high end like tech job and was going out on his own. And he was looking for people, and he was going to charge a little less money than like the normal to produce an excellent product for me. But we're working together as like solo, not totally solopreneurs, but we kind of have to understand each other. Yeah. So like, it might take them a little longer to get things completed, but that's kind of what comes with that little bit less of a price. Yep. But the end product has been amazing. Like, I'm so excited about it. I finally launched the app and people have been using it for the past couple of months. And it's just so fun to see this thing here that you've been working so hard on for so long, and know, like, even more than that people are so grateful for it. Because the feedback I get is so encouraging to me. Like, this is just amazing. Like, I would have never been able to get a pathologist's opinion about this, whatever. Or I have a couple of vets that are using me that live in Alaska and one in the Yukon in Canada.
Yes.
So, and they don't have the ability to transport these samples. So
and or the transportation costs, and so I have a number of rural practices now where those transportation costs on top of the cytology or immunohistochemistry, if we're doing those, it's cost prohibitive.
Right.
It doubles the costs even before you've gotten to the lab itself. And then the turnaround times on top of that are such that sometimes you need it now based on what's happening.
Exactly.
And it's a huge hindrance. So when I saw this, I went, wait a second.
Yeah. So there is this big change in the pathology space, moving to digital pathology. So a lot of companies are offering scanner services. So you have a scanner and you scan your slide. I read cases for these companies. I love digital pathology and I love the scan services. The problem with that, at least at this point, and this is not a knock on those, it's just a different need. So those scanners, take up table space. So if you're a mobile vet, you may not have space for that. They can come with some higher costs. It can be cost prohibitive. And if you have a low volume, practice, or you're not doing a ton of cytology, you may not need that. So, with static telecytology, it's validated in both human and veterinary medicine as an acceptable means of review. And they're going to be, the pathologist is experienced enough to say, hey, this needs more, like either this really does need a full slide review for whatever reason, or this needs to go ahead and go straight to histopath or whatever, so it can at least give that, or know what you think is an organism, like is blasto, is actually just crud on the slide. So like, stop looking at it.
So good.
Yeah.
Kate, there is a conception out there that if it's not the gold standard, that it's not good enough. We spoke about that in our last episode.
Yeah.
Now that this has been live for a couple of months, has there been blowback and or pushback from some of the community?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, there's been a ton of support. I thought that there could be some, grumblings from the pathology community, because I think that there's, like you guys said, or like we've talked about, there's resistance to things when they're not the norm, or they're maybe considered a lesser, lesser than option. In my mind, this is an alternative option. It's not a lesser than, and it's not a replacement for. So it's not that this option is like, you don't need any full slide review, whatever. This is the new way of cytology. I'm not talking anything like that. This is an option for people who don't otherwise have an option, or who need something that maybe traditional cytology doesn't provide. So yeah, no, there's been a lot of support, and I'm also not the only person offering static telecytology. So there are a couple of universities actually that offer this. I'm just the only one with an app. So that was kind of where my entrepreneurial brain kicked in to say, how can I make this easier? Because I know that, y'all out there in practice are so busy, you don't have time. Yeah, sometimes some of these forms that I see, I'm like, why do we even need to ask them that? I don't, can we cut out some of this extraneous stuff? Like, that's just, I feel like sometimes we're just using cut and paste forms for some things in veterinary medicine. That's like, you don't even need to know that. Like, here's what I need to know. Like, let me help. I'm always thinking, how can I help things move faster, but also accurately for you guys? But yeah, no, it's been pretty good. I mean, honestly, the feedback has been good so far.
Fantastic. Okay, Kate, I anticipated this catch up. It's like, we have so much we can talk on. I do have a few more questions, and then I want to hear more on the RV, and then we'll wrap things here. But you had said, living the way you want to live, right? And you created the space for that. I anticipate for our listeners, one thing that is going to be jumping out to them is, I want that. I feel like I do not have any space in my life. I don't have flexibility of my schedule, or maybe flexibility of how I earn income. If you can remember back, or have any tips, how does a listener create the space for like that first inch, right? Like if they just feel my back is against the wall, I just need to create that first millimeter to get moving. Any thoughts or remembering back on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing is to remember that there's nothing special about me or any other entrepreneur that's pursued business as an option in their life, as a self-sustaining kind of, that it all started at some point. And even if you're not interested in entrepreneurship and you're just interested in schedule flexibility and trying to create more space in your life with what you have, like maybe you love your job, you're not interested in business ownership or anything like that. But you feel like maybe you're working too much, or maybe your hours are not ideal, or maybe you're taking things home that part you really don't want to be doing records at home. Like I've experienced that with my husband. It's like, how can we keep you from having to do records at home? And being creative about trying to find ways that you can eliminate some of these time sucks that maybe you have to pay somebody to help you, but you pay for that time. Like, I'm willing to pay for time. Time is, everybody says the biggest commodity, and I would rather have time than money, but money gives you time. Like in my mind, time is, money gives me time. So if I can pay somebody to, like if I'm a veterinarian, there's some services now that help you dictate your records. If I can pay somebody to help me dictate my records, then I don't necessarily have to take those records home with me, and I've just purchased some extra time. So like that's a huge add value to your life. So I think just kind of higher vision, 30,000 foot view, taking a time audit of where you spend all your time, kind of realizing what time sucks you have that just don't fulfill you, and say, what can I kind of cut out of this, this is not really what I want to be doing. Or if you do have bigger visions, like you do want a different job that affords you more time or more life fulfillment, like don't be afraid to pursue those options. We get so stuck in this, well, this is what, this is my job, and like I don't want to rock the boat, and I have a family and I don't want to mess with things. But talk to your spouse or your mate or whoever your partner is, or if you don't have a partner, get real with yourself and say, like, what do I want and how can I get that? Because there's probably, even if you're not able to go from point A to point Z immediately, there's little steps you can take to kind of start dipping your toes in waters and get there. And it's going to be different for everybody. But for me, early on, I did not say, I want to be an entrepreneur and work for myself. I never wanted to own a business. If somebody would have said to me, you want to be a business owner? I'd be like, no, I love this now because I have fun doing what I want to do. And when I look back, I think there were signs that I was going to end up here. Like when I was selling shoes to my parents as a kid, having a shoe sale, like I'd collect all their shoes, put them up in a line, and they'd have to purchase shoes from me. And then I've had little entrepreneurial things through my life. Like I made miniature doll food out of clay in my residency. This was not like when I was a little kid. I had an Etsy store making these little miniatures that people that were doll collectors loved to buy. It's very weird, I know. Katie did miniatures. It was a whole thing. But yeah, I just sort of like explored those different things and kind of went, okay, let's try that. I don't know. If it doesn't work out, let's do something else.
I love it, Kate. I love hearing about this. I know some people will call it like the work-life balance. I'm not a big fan of that term. I prefer, like life with work balance or something like that. And you've done such a great job, you and your husband, of creating that for you and your family. I guess as we wrap here, give us a little tease on, what's coming in the RV for the rest of 2022, or maybe a funny or a good experience you've had. Cause I know you said January was Florida Keys, and you've done a bunch of other trips since then and lots more planned.
Yeah. So Florida Keys was in January. Then we went to, we actually traveled up to Northern Virginia, and I did a whole day CE for the Richmond area veterinarians. And so we did Shenandoah National Park and Smoky Mountains. Then we went on our Michigan trip just recently. That's the one we just got back from. That was incredible. Close to Canada, right? So shout out to Canada.
Should have popped in. You were
I
right
know.
beside.
I know. But it was amazing. We spent so we stopped in Chicago on the way up, and I spoke at Chicago Vet. And so we were talking before we started recording. My husband, he takes the kids and entertains them while I'm working, and they're fine with that. They're like, we get to go to the museum. Cool. I'll see you later. And so that balance has been great, because again, it's another income source for me to kind of pair with these trips. It pays for gas. I'll tell you what, right now, gas with that RV is insane.
It's not a good time to be hauling a fifth wheel across the United States.
Not at all. But that helps us a lot to be able to have me speak for a few hours. But yeah, so we went to Mackinac Island, which, if anybody listening is from Michigan, your state is incredible. It is a gem that people don't know about. And so like, go to Michigan. It's amazing. But Mackinac Island's a little island where they only have horses and bikes. So you can't drive a car on the island. You take a ferry to get there. It was funny because you asked for a funny story. The kids were so tired. Like that was the highlight of the Michigan trip for me. Like I wanted to get to Mackinac Island, but the kids were really tired. It was a lot to ask of them to do all day with no naps or no rest on this island. And our daughter was really overtired, and we were eating lunch, and she ate too much, and she just blew chunks all over the table. Like, and it was just this nightmare, because then my son is going, baby glowed up, which means threw up, baby threw up. And he's walking around everybody in the restaurant. We're like trying to clean up. He's going, she threw up, she's sick. The rest of the day, everybody we passed, it was, our baby's sick, our baby threw up. Anderson, like, she's fine. But yeah, coming up, we had planned to go to Maine in a couple of weeks, which we actually are postponing to next year. It felt like we had 2 back-to-back long trips planned. So we're going to go to what's it called, Mammoth Cave, which is a national park here. It's a couple hours away instead. And then we're going to do Utah. That's a big trip for us out west. So that's like a over 24-hour drive. And we'll do the 5 national parks in Utah. And then after that, we are wrapping up the year with a trip to Disney World. So no national parks there, but it should be. And the kids are really excited about that. Every single day, my son says, how many days until Disney World? And I say 6 months, Anderson. It's a long time.
That's amazing. I like how you have that kind of at the end for something for them to look forward to. Someday. Riley doesn't understand or know what that is yet, but I'm sure someday it'll be on the list.
Yeah, I think as soon as 4 hits, they start to really, because I thought the same. I'm like, when they're before, 2-ish, whatever, they're not really, it's fun to see it through their eyes when they experience it, but they can't anticipate it. And so he's finally to the point where he anticipates it, and at the expense of my sanity, but it's good.
Okay, Kate, as always, this was a blast. I suspect this may not be the last time we hear from you on the podcast.
Yeah, I hope not. And I know we planned for like 20 minutes, but I'm, as you guys know, really verbose.
We blew that out of the water. Yeah. And that's me too. I always go long. I could tell whenever I'm leading them, Jonathan's like, oh, we better book longer. But
when you said 20 minutes, I was like, no way. It's not going to happen.
It was a blast. I guess just as a reminder, if anyone wants to reach out, where can they track you down?
Yeah, the best place would be my website, which is www.veterinarypsychologyschoolhouse.com. That has all my free and paid resources, so like courses, but also a bunch of free stuff too for learning. And then you can also contact me directly from there if you have any questions or anything at all. I'm an open book, so please feel free to reach out.
Okay, excellent. And we're not running you through the impact round, but was there just a chicken that walked by? Was that what I just saw or no?
It sure was. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We got
fantastic.
Big John, our rooster, and our 25 chickens.
That is fantastic. I remember from your previous recording when you listed all your pets, I was like, wow, you have a lot of
luckily my father-in-law is a farmer and lives 15 minutes away. So when we're on our trips, like he helps us with the outdoor animals.
The chickens don't come in the RV. Good.
No, not yet. If my husband has anything to do with it, not yet.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we will wrap as always. The final word goes to you. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
So much, but I just, I would encourage you to think outside the box. I know it's cliche, but don't get too comfortable unless you're happy where you are. And you don't have to be unhappy to look for more. You can be totally happy, but still reach and keep kind of pushing your limits and see what more you can have in your life to fulfill your life. And it's not all about just like more, but just, filling your life with really good things and trying to maximize on opportunities that come up.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes weekly. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and you want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others that may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you please share the show with them, as this will help us grow our community to reach more and more veterinary professionals. Speaking of which, if you are a veterinary professional and would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send an email to theveterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or perhaps requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent to theveterinaryprojectpodcast@gmail.com. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.